Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in Tel Arad in the middle of the Negev desert to explore this biblical city more than 5,000 years old that holds many mysteries and secrets. Let's explore the Canaanite city, the fortress of King Solomon, and end with the biggest mystery of all. A temple built by some of the 12 tribes of Israel, but against God's commandments, as it was built outside of Jerusalem, and in it they burned cannabis. So if you are ready, let's get started. The city of Arad was founded over 5,000 years ago. And despite being so ancient, it was made with urban planning. We can clearly see where we are walking now. It's a street that was paved. And now here on the side we can see the different houses, and we are going to go in to see how the Canaanites lived. Look at this house of literally 5,000 years. It's small by today's standards, but for that time, this here was luxury, the best they had. Around the whole house, it looks like these low benches that could serve both for people to sit and also as storage. Here were stored the jars, and right in the middle of the house, here, this stone that you're seeing, it held a pillar, a wooden post that upheld the entire roof. And I can say that it's really hot outside, and just by entering this stone construction, you can already feel the temperature dropping a few degrees. People were able to live here in the middle of the desert because they had the technology to withstand this climate. Part of it was the type of construction, and also part of it was the management of water. Where did they get water here in the middle of the desert, which has no springs, rivers, and practically no rain? Let's see how the Canaanites survived with almost no water. When they design the city plan, they make gutters and detours that will gather all the rainwater from the city into this cistern that we are seeing. It hardly rains, but the few days that it does rain here, 100% of the city's water is used for the cistern. And so they use this water throughout the year, and thus they were able to survive here even in the most extreme climates. And Arad, like any respectable city in biblical times, had a great wall that we can see here at our side. It is over 1.2 kilometers long and 2.5 meters wide, really to protect the city's population, which wasn't that large. We're talking about around 2,500 people. But the wall wasn't enough. The wall had further protection, which were the towers, like the one we see here. This is a semicircular tower. And now we are entering this tower. And for me, it's amazing to imagine that someone who was here over 3,000 years ago saw and fought against Moses, as we know from this Bible passage. The Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming by way of Atarim. He attacked the Israelites and took some of them captive. Then the king of Arad and his soldiers were on their wall towers, among them this one here. And they fought and defeated the people of Israel. Then they will force Moses to go back in the southern direction and go all the way around Edom. What we know as the 40 years wandering in the desert, because the path between Egypt and Israel is very close. So why do the people take this roundabout route as we see on the map? First, because they had to spend 40 years in the desert, as God had ordered, and also because physically they couldn't enter the promised land because of the various enemies who attacked them. And among these enemies that prevented the people of Israel from entering the promised land were Arad and its king. We can already see the fortress of King Solomon in the background, and now we are going to take this walk and continue discovering the mysteries of this city. What happened to the Canaanite city of Arad? It was abandoned, and we don't know exactly why. But after a while of this place being empty, the ones who take over this place are the people of Israel. And 3,000 years ago, King Solomon built a large fortress here, the entrance of which is exactly behind me, to protect his empire from attacks by Edomites and Moabites. So let's enter the fortress. Arad has many mysteries, and the treasure found here helps us unravel them. This treasure is almost 200 Ostraca, which are inscriptions on pottery. There are 200 inscriptions, more than 100 in Hebrew, 85 in Aramaic. And they tell us a bit about the daily life of the fortress between 2,900 and 2,600 years ago. Most of them are actually not so interesting because they are bureaucratic papers. They are letters between the leaders of this fortress and the leaders of other Jewish fortresses, daily maintenance issues, but among these Austrians, some have also been found that shocked the world of archaeology. 2 of them have the name Arad written on them, and this confirms that we really are in the biblical city of Arad. And one of them is written Beit Adonai, the house of God. Adonai, as it is written in Hebrew, Yud He Vav He. This phrase appears in the Bible in the first book of Kings, chapter 3, verse 1. Solomon allied himself with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, for he took Pharaoh's daughter as his wife. He brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his own palace, the house of the Lord, and the wall around Jerusalem. This inscription that was found here is extremely important because it is one of the oldest with the complete name of God, Yud He Vav He, and the oldest ever found, referring to the temple of Jerusalem, the house of God, the house of Adonai, as it is written in this verse we just heard. This inscription does not refer to the temple that was here in Arad, but to the temple of Jerusalem, the only temple that was instructed according to God's orders. But before we visit this temple, so problematic, before that we are going to go underground in Arar and learn a little about what is beneath our feet. Let's go. And what is this underground complex that we are entering now? This here is the water cistern, Just as the Canaanites stored water, in the same way, the people of Israel did it a few centuries later. The water from the entire fortress was diverted here, and it was kept here for months, sometimes for years, and so all the soldiers in the fortress could drink water, and to prevent the water from escaping, from seeping into the earth, all of this here was covered with 6 layers of hydraulic plaster. So this cistern held the source of water, the source of life for this fortress, and it could hold a lot of water. This space here has the capacity for 400 cubic meters of water. Entering this place gives me a somewhat strange feeling. I don't know if it's because of the place itself or because I know what happened here, but it stirs. It's a strange feeling. But where are we? We are inside a temple, built against the instructions of God, and who built this temple were part of the people of Israel, part of the 12 tribes of Israel, mainly the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Simeon. And they are going to build this mini temple that is 20 meters by 13 meters long. According to the instructions of the Temple of Jerusalem, see the irony, one of the similarities is the direction. Here is the direction of the sunrise, here is the east, the same way the Temple of Jerusalem was facing east. And when we entered the temple, what was the first thing we saw? A sacrificial altar, and that's exactly what I see here. Look at this altar whose measures follow the biblical instructions. It's 5 cubits by 5 cubits. And the priest would go up here to make sacrifices. But let's be clear that the sacrifices made here were only animal sacrifices exactly on this central stone that we see. But who are the priests? We're not sure, but what we did find here among the many inscriptions are the names of 2 families of Cohen, who are descendants of Aaron, part of the tribe of Levi. These same families served in the temple in Jerusalem, and perhaps some people from this family also came to serve in this temple. And the families are as follows: Meremoth and Pashur. But wasn't the altar the most important place in the temple? The most important and shocking place in this temple was the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies, which is right here behind us, and we are going to enter now. And as soon as we enter, the first thing we see are 2 incense altars. And when I call this personal place shocking, it is not an exaggeration in my opinion. What was found here is really shocking for archaeology and biblical archaeology. When they were excavating, they found some little incense ashes on the altars. They took samples from both altars, sent them to 2 different laboratories. And the results arrived together, and the results are the same. What incense was burnt here? On the main altar, frankincense was burned, which makes a lot of sense because it was one of the types of incense burned in the Temple of Jerusalem. But on the small altar, cannabis was burned. Yes, the cannabis that we know today already existed back then, and they burned cannabis here. And this shocked the archaeological world here in Israel because we have not found any other connection between the worship of the people of Israel and cannabis and any other hallucinogenic drug. And thus finding cannabis here was really very strange. I need to explain something. The cannabis here was burned as incense. It was not smoked. But still, there was quite a bit of cannabis smoke coming from this place. And this is one of the mistakes, one of the abominations that were done here. First, we see that the temple is in the wrong place. God orders the temple to be built in Jerusalem. So first, we are in the wrong place. Second, cannabis is not among the incenses allowed to be used inside the temple. And one more shocking thing is that there are two here. Incense altars. Why? There is only one God. The people of Israel worship one God, and that's why they had an incense altar. And here, when the archaeological excavations were made, they found two, one larger and one smaller, and more than one matzeva was also found here, which we are going to go up and see now. And climbing these small steps, we enter the part that was considered the Holy of Holies, the most sacred point of this entire temple. And I want to make it very clear that I am not walking here on top of archaeology to disrespect it. The original Holy of Holies, these original stones, they were taken to the Museum of Israel, and there they are being preserved. So what we are seeing here are replicas that are exactly in the place where they were and help us understand this place. So here were two incense altars and two matzevot. It's the plural of matzeva. These stones had one here and one right behind me. I don't know exactly why they removed this one, but originally there were two, as you can see in this photo. But what is a matzeva? Did these pillars or columns represent God? It was a practice used by both the people of Israel and the Canaanite people. But that's why it's so strange to find here a double altar with two stones and two altars. And some people speculate that the greatest abomination at this site was not the cannabis, but the worship of two gods, with the God of Israel on one side with a larger altar, and a smaller stone with a smaller altar that perhaps was for the goddess Asherah. We're not sure about this, it's a speculation. It could be that they just happened to put two and still only worship one God. But there's a lot wrong with this place, as you can see. And the question is, who was the person or the king who ordered the construction of this place? The original theory is that this temple was built by King Solomon himself, as he was probably the one who built the fortress. And because we know he also had a little bit of a pagan side as well. The Bible itself tells us that he married pagan women and that he participated in their worship. So perhaps he was the one who brought this mixed worship with Asherah to this place. But archaeologists disagree because they've collected various materials here with various techniques, including carbon-14, and have discovered that this temple was built in the year 750 before Christ, and who reigned at that time was King Ahaz. And this fits perfectly with what the Bible tells us. Ahaz, he was a very bad king and an extremely idolatrous king. He will even make sacrifices to pagan gods. And perhaps the worst of all is that he sacrifices his own son to a pagan god. And he will build for Israel places to burn incense to other gods, as it's written in this passage. Achaz was 20 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord, unlike David his father. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel and even made molten images for the Baals. In every city of Judah, he built high places to burn incense to other gods, and thus provoked the wrath of the Lord, God of his fathers. And what became of this temple? Indeed, King Ahaz's son was King Hezekiah, and he was the opposite of his father. He fought against idolatry and broke the high places. Among them, this one we see here. He breaks the statutes and makes the biggest religious reform that Israel has ever seen, as we can read in this verse from the 2nd book of Kings. In the 3rd year of the reign of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. Hezekiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He also broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made. The children of Israel called this snake Nehushtan, and until that day they had been burning incense to it. Less than 50 years after Ahaz built this temple, King Hezekiah destroys it. But he does not destroy it with wars. The interesting thing is, this place was found dismantled, which fits perfectly with the biblical description. They take this temple, dismantle its altar, dismantle everything, and cover it with earth, so that no one else can come to worship here, and only go to Jerusalem, the house of God. I think the story of Arad is one of the most fascinating in all of Israel. Despite being a less visited site, here we get to witness life in the middle of the desert, buildings from King Solomon's time. But the main thing is really this temple. See how low the people of Israel can go with the house and all its idolatry. But I think the best example of this place is precisely Hezekiah, who was born in a house full of idolatry, where his own brother was sacrificed to pagan gods. He knows how to discern, to understand the story in a different way and choose the right path. And that's why he was the one who dismantled this place, and we found it 2,600 years later. To prove to us, once again, the truth of the biblical stories here from the time since Moses, passing through King Solomon, King Ahasuerus, and Hezekiah. I hope you enjoyed getting to know this such a different and controversial place in Israel, and if you are around in the Arad area, be sure to visit Arad. A big kiss, and see you next time.